Well, good afternoon, Ben. Hope you're having a good day thus far.
Absolutely.
Great. It's a pleasure to be with you to record this podcast for BoardSavvyTransitCEO.com. Why don't we begin by you telling us a bit about your background in public transportation?
Yeah, you bet. Be happy to. Yeah, I'm a native of Michigan. My family growing up was primarily in the automobile industry in Michigan, so I really grew up in a transportation household, although it was automobile transportation. Yeah, so, from an early age, I saw through a different lens about connecting people to life, and that really drove, I believe, my interest in getting involved professionally in transportation. Although seeing it through a different lens, I was certainly open to and very interested in other mobility options. And I carried that throughout school, got a master's degree in urban planning from Cleveland State in Ohio, and began my career as an intern at the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority in Cleveland, Ohio, where my job was really twofold. I had to start a new program doing transit-oriented development, known as TOD. And then the other job that I grew into as the job grew into a full-time opportunity with the RTA in Cleveland was doing community outreach to support what was known then as the Euclid Corridor Transportation Project, now known as the Helpline in Cleveland. So that was a large capital project that I was able to get my arms around at early in my career. And that
I take it that line goes from downtown east out to the hospital area, Cleveland Clinic, and
it does, yeah.
University hospitals.
Downtown Cleveland in the Terminal Tower, which is where their heavy and light rail system meets, and then extends east through the city's cultural district known as University Circle. My opportunity at the RTA in Cleveland was grant funded, so the grant funds ran out, so I naturally took a job in University Circle as their chief planner, where my primary job, again, was to help with the design of the Euclid Avenue Helpline bus rapid transit.
So University Circle is where you have like the Cleveland Museum of Art, the Natural History Museum, and Case Western Reserve Campus, and so on. Incredible area, isn't it? Amazing.
Exactly. I liked it so much, I moved from downtown Cleveland to University Circle. I lived in a neighborhood called Little Italy.
I know it well. Well, I spent 25 years in that great city, Cleveland, Ohio, so we have many shared memories.
City of neighborhoods.
That's right.
And I knew then that my passion for public transportation really took off with that experience in Cleveland, and I knew then that's what I wanted to do in the career I wanted to have. So what I did is I started monitoring and reading all I could about public transit and the state of public transit throughout the country, as well as specifically, I was having so much fun working on a large capital expansion project, or a large capital project. I wanted to go somewhere where they were investing, the region was investing significantly in expanding public transportation. So I started watching ballot initiatives. What did they include? What were the levels of investment? And in late 2004, there was a ballot initiative passed in metropolitan Phoenix called Proposition 104, and I immediately pursued an opportunity to work at Valley Metro in Phoenix, Arizona, and moved down to Phoenix sight unseen.
What a creative career development step.
Yeah.
That's so innovative.
Yeah, I accepted a position as a project manager where I got to help and ultimately lead. I spent 10 years in Phoenix, the development of a multimodal transit system. So it was about 60 miles of light rail. It had a streetcar line. It had facilities across the valley. It had substantial expansion of bus service. And, yeah, it gave me an opportunity because Cleveland was an established transit system that was reinvesting in its urban core to drive economic development. In Phoenix, it was a rapidly growing region that was trying to, the transportation system and public transportation system was trying to keep up with growth and to help stimulate economic growth within the cities throughout the valley. And to support all of that, Phoenix had a layer cake of funding, whether it was locally based or city based, and then regionally to support the expansion of public transportation. So I was in a unique position. Here I was that it was a transit agency that was brand new. It was formed in 2002. So it was only 2 to 3 years old by the time I got there. And so I got to get involved in many different aspects of public transportation above and beyond planning and development.
You were in at the beginning in a very real sense.
Yes, absolutely.
Building the organization.
Yeah, so I got a lot of exposure to organizational design, how to develop a strategy, working with the community on what they were seeking from a successful public transportation system. And I got to help build many of the partnerships in the community. It was an exceptional opportunity that I really credit with propelling me forward from there. When I moved to Phoenix, I thought, well, I will move there for 3, 4, 5 years at the most. I ended up staying almost 10 because the opportunity and what we were able to accomplish in Phoenix was just keeping me very interested. And again, we were able to accomplish a lot. Really bringing rail transit to an auto-centric city was exciting, to say.
Sounds like you were having fun, too.
Oh, yeah, a ton of fun. A ton of fun. But, learned a lot about developing leadership skills. Learned a lot about what a truly multimodal transit system was. Learned a lot about strategic planning. Led a couple of those initiatives. How to get stuff done. How to be a good steward of finances. How to engage stakeholders and build consensus, and working with government, and even the role of the federal government in building and sustaining public transit. So
you covered the leadership waterfront in a very real sense while you were there.
Exactly. Yeah. I was, and met some great people. Really built some great relationships with my peers from across the country as well.
What was the next step?
Yeah, then I got a call about a unique opportunity. When I was in Phoenix, I was really charged with implementing a sales tax program after it was already passed, and then we prepared for another vote back in 2014, which was successful. So at that time, I saw a little valley or window of opportunity to go explore to see what might be out there as a new set of challenges. And I got a call about a unique opportunity with the city of Atlanta working on a really transformational urban redevelopment project known as the Beltline. So the Beltline is a 22-mile abandoned railroad corridor circling the central part of the city of Atlanta. Atlanta's original name used to be Terminus, and the reason for that is all of the rail lines used to actually terminate there. There were several rail lines coming together, and over time, as transportation systems evolved, these rail lines that used to circle the city became abandoned, and then there was this new concept to redevelop the central part of Atlanta by installing transit around this beltline, as well as promoting economic growth and activity in a trail network and all kinds of other things. So essentially, I worked for the city of Atlanta, but specifically in the Beltline project as their director, where I really got to utilize my skills at working with localities to build consensus around what the future vision for the city of Atlanta was going to be. But we needed money. And at that point, I hadn't done a lot of work with state legislatures to really build support for investing in public transportation, and that was one of the main charges at the Beltline, was to create a plan and go sell it to the state legislature about the future vision for public transit within the city of Atlanta. Well, while I was doing that, I was having those conversations next to the folks at the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority, known as MARTA, in Atlanta, and we like talking to each other so much. I received an offer to go work as their assistant general manager over planning at MARTA, so I stayed about a year on the Beltline project and then moved over to MARTA, where my first week I spent rapidly preparing to go sell a $8 billion regional expansion program to the state legislature for MARTA. MARTA, it's just had its 40th birthday. Its rail system did, and it hasn't expanded since 2000. Meanwhile, Metropolitan Atlanta is growing rapidly, but their public transit system hasn't been keeping up. And so my primary responsibility there was to, of course, work with the chief executive officer. I worked for a great mentor and great friend of mine, Keith Parker. And the charge there was to expand MARTA, provide more MARTA service. I was charged with expanding bus service to Clayton County, which is south of the airport, if you're familiar with Atlanta. It's south of downtown, as well as selling this $8 billion expansion program to the state legislature. Well, the intent was for the $8 billion program to cover two counties. We were able to convince the state legislature to allow us to go to a vote for a half-cent sales tax within the city of Atlanta. So I got to take the plan that I developed at the Beltline, and that became the program that it's now known as More MARTA Atlanta, really became the backbone of that plan. I also oversaw, while I was at MARTA, all of the operations support, scheduling, and service planning, and lots of the external affairs and marketing, community outreach, those types of programs as well. So it's a great learning from working in a great organization in a wonderful metropolitan area and for innovative leader really prepared me well to start accepting calls for chief executive officer opportunities.
And you are now at the helm of the Hillsborough Area Rapid Transit Authority. Tell us a bit about HART.
You bet. Perfect segue. So I was, old habits die hard. I was watching referendums across the country, and there was this citizen-led initiative in Hillsborough County in Tampa that many people thought didn't have much of a chance of passing. Well, it did in the fall of 2018. And that organization had been without a permanent CEO at that point for almost a year. Mm-hmm. And the board of directors quickly identified the tremendous need to get a CEO with experience expanding transit systems. And so they did a national recruitment. I got a call, and it was immediately just the perfect fit because I saw my background professionally as well as my interests personally aligning with what the board was seeking from HART.
Tell us a bit more about this idea, Ben.
Yeah,
tell us a bit more about this idea of a good fit. How did you determine that? What kinds of questions did you ask? Who did you talk with?
They passed a 1-cent tax, and HART was set to, their budget was going to grow by 2.5 times. And so their transit system was not only going to expand, but the organization was going to, I use the word transform substantially. So although my background was deeply rooted in expansion programs, I still wanted to make sure it was the best fit for both of us. So here I was in Atlanta. I started traveling down to Tampa. This is after I applied, but even before I got an interview. I set up meetings with community members. I rode the bus. I talked to customers, talked to city council members, business leaders, the chamber, really laid out a plan to gather as much information as I could about the state of public transit in Hillsborough County and what folks were looking for in the future public transportation system. I learned a lot.
You know, Ben, I think you ought to teach a graduate course in career development at some point.
Yeah, maybe that'll come.
Like you've developed a model for innovative career development. Well, go on.
Yeah,
tell us more. What
the
sold
question
you on
the questions and the feedback that I heard was almost a perfect blend of my experience in Phoenix, which is we are growing rapidly and our transit system needs to grow rapidly. But then I heard some of the core things that I learned in Atlanta about how to develop a transit system in an equitable fashion. How do you build and sustain an affordable city for everyone to live in? And those lessons I really learned in Atlanta. And so I heard these common themes of different places that I've worked throughout my career. That's when I really knew it was the perfect fit. And I heard these things during my community interviews. And so when I was asking questions of the board, I was essentially validating what I had already learned from their community members. So I came into the process, I'd say, pretty well informed on the lay of the land in Tampa.
Now, once you accepted the board's offer to take the helm as HART's new CEO. What did you do immediately to prepare yourself for the challenge? You've told us about how you learned about the community and that predisposed you to take the job. Now you got it. So what was your immediate planning to hit the ground running?
Yeah, so because I had done so much boots on the ground work even before I interviewed, as I became more and more, even before I signed on to the job, I started preparing the 100-day plan, 1-year plan, and 5-year, or 3-year really, because the contract ended up being 3 years. But I started working on my 100-day plan immediately. And so by the time I had accepted the job, I already had my 100-day plan.
What are some key milestones in your 100-day plan? Give us a sense of what that was.
My first 30 days was all about discovery. So, I reached out to specific, I did a lot of one-on-one meetings, did a listening tour. I got familiar with the financials and other key performance metrics, got a thorough understanding of existing services as well as the collective bargaining situation, and then, of course, an action plan to meet the wants, needs of the voters about the sales tax. And then I quickly focused on the overall transformation of HART, looked at the organization, really tried to focus on getting the right people in the right role with the right focus, to have an organization structured and staffed to deliver successful projects as well as excellent services to the customers.
So you did organizational design work as part of the 100.
Exactly right.
Plan. You were actually involved in thinking through the design of the organization you'd be heading.
Yeah, right away.
Great.
Although I did a lot of due diligence learning about the organization. And then, I've been using this transformation of HART focused on really driving a new culture of excellence, rebranding HART as a transit agency that Hillsborough County and beyond would be proud of. Clearly defining what our priorities are going to be. Here you had a region that has underinvested in public transit. Historically, that it's pretty well documented about some of the challenges that this region has had around public transportation. I focused a lot on partnerships with the community, sustainable financial plan, but also, the world's changing rapidly, so staying innovative around, new technologies. I wanted to ensure that HART was going to be a good business partner, so focused a lot on procurement and DBE programs, and all of that was going to go to support the action plan to accelerate transit expansion in Hillsborough County, and then to become an organization that was rooted in performance metrics. You can build all of the shiny new toys that everyone wants and enjoys, but if your organization is not performance driven, you will not be sustainable in the long term.
Well, you're almost a model for thorough planning and development. I have a closing question here, sir. How long have you been on the job now, by the way? When did you take the helm?
So let's see here, a little over 100 days.
Okay. So this is a good time to record this podcast. What's been most challenging during this 100-day period for you? This, what you might call the settling in process, becoming fully CEO of HART. What have you found most challenging?
That's a great question. The most challenging aspect is the one, of course, that I haven't fully measured yet, and that is the transformation of HART and an organization's budget that goes from $100 million a year to $250 million a year overnight is enormous. And so how to get the idea of the significance of the transformation of HART across to employees, across to the board of directors, customers, community members.
Yeah, and the public, because this is pretty visible process, right?
Yeah, and the public.
Everyone's watching.
The HART of yesterday and today is going to be completely different tomorrow. And that's globally what the biggest challenge is. Now there are specific things along the way, of course, that are huge challenges, but this idea about how do you transform in an organization to that magnitude undoubtedly has been the biggest challenge. But, I've gotten a ton of support. The support from all of those constituents that I mentioned has been unbelievable. Most notably, the support and appetite from the business community specifically is going to certainly help me and the organization succeed in the future.
And I assume the board is really at your back on this, really supporting this transformation.
Absolutely. I mean, led by the board chair, Les Miller, Commissioner Les Miller, as well as others. We have a new mayor. So we are newbies together. Mayor Jane Castor has been a tremendous ally, as well as the rest of the HART board of directors. They have been very supportive, and again, being on the job about 107 days, looking forward to rolling up our sleeves and really getting to work.
Well, it sounds like we're going to need a part 2, Ben, as this transformation goes forward. Very exciting. And, of course, I'm a resident of Tampa Bay, just across town from you, and I'm watching this with tremendous interest as transportation catches up with the phenomenal growth in this area. Well, you're in the perfect position given your background, and I want to thank you, Ben, for this excellent podcast. I know people are going to love it, going to listen to it with great interest. So let's keep in mind doing a part 2 in a few months as the transformation unfolds. And meanwhile, have a great rest of your day, dear sir.
You too, Doug. Thanks a lot for having me.